healer jobs are at risk of extinction. At least that's what Twitter would like you to think. So as of late, if you've been kind of keeping up with some of the drama that's been unfolding on Twitter, people are enjoying running 4 DPS prot paladin compositions, and this has sparked a lot of controversy amongst some of the healers, basically stating that their jobs are at risk of being taken, and effectively them stating that, you know, the healing role in M+ is something that needs to functionally change. And thus, today we're going to be talking about kind of how I think about the healer role in general in M+, and what my take on this situation is. So basically this goes down, and I'm going to start off with a meme. With the old Prot Paladin, a great spec, very powerful, and Nerf has tweeted out this, where, you know, he was able to time a quarter stars 28. And this is off the back of, like, Zamak tweeting out a few weeks back that he timed a 27 Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. Zamak actually does this pretty consistently, where he runs like Prot Paladin and 4 DPS compositions, and he tries to get the title every single season running something similar to this. So it's not new for him to be looking to do this. Now it is new for other people to be looking to play this, you know, at cutting edge level keys. And this then created a situation where some of the more prominent healers in the community weigh in. You have JB saying, "Yo, at Warcraft devs, can we maybe take a hard look at off healing? It was kind of cute in a 23 court, but less cute when it's one of the top 50 keys done this season." And what he's referencing is actually the MDI, because during the MDI this most recent weekend, in Quarter Star specifically, we had runs that involved no healer, where basically they were playing 4 DPS compositions. On top of that, we have Jack weighing in, and his take on this is kind of, Blizzard makes healing checks in dungeons, but then they cannot balance healer output, so they nerf the heal checks. Healers then do not have to heal as much, so they do the affixes and they occasionally have to heal. But now the heal checks are too low that we see no healer runs in high keys in the MDI. Despair. And so those are kind of JB and Jack's takes on the whole matter. And basically this is a situation where they think that, you know, heal checks either aren't too hard and like healer balance isn't the exact same. Because if you think about it, at the beginning of the season, I remember watching the MDI, and I remember watching a 22 Tyrannical Raging Tempest before it got nerfed, and there was a Resto Shaman that was absolutely drenched in sweat, barely able to keep his group alive, and then they eventually came through and they nerfed the Raging Tempest, and we've seen other bosses get nerfed over the course of the entire season. I think Advisor Melandris is one that comes to mind, which is the last boss at Quarter Stars. Obviously, Raging Tempest got nerfed because the damage output was just a little bit high. There have been others. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think Hurge also got nerfed at some point as well, just to name a few. And then, yeah, and it's like Roybin weighs into, I don't see anything wrong with me as a Resto Druid struggling on the first boss of Shadow Moon Burial Grounds because it's RNG boss abilities, and Protection Paladin is just healing that boss on 27 Tyrannical. Happy birthday to all the Mistweaver monks. And Nagura also kind of weighed in from a different perspective. She is somebody who ends up playing 4 DPS compositions fairly regularly, and she says, isn't the whole 4 DPS key thing just a Prot Paladin issue? Just make them heal less on anyone that isn't themselves. I will cast a regrowth on myself for 5% of my HP, and then a Protection Paladin will basically lay on hands me with a Word of Glory. And so, I mean, we have, I mean, there's footage of like Zamak doing runs. He's the one who does it the most consistently, and it's not something that's like super popular, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And so let me just kind of give the alternative POV. It's kind of cool whenever you see groups that don't run with a healer, right? And it's kind of cool whenever you see situations where you have to play a unique style to be able to get through runs without a healer present. Let me click through that. You didn't see that. It's kind of cool whenever you're able to get through runs without a healer present, and that's something that I believe is actually super unique. The fact that the meta is such to where you are able to play a lot of really cool stuff. Now there's a question as to whether or not completely omitting a role is healthy for dungeon balance, and I think that's you can make that argument reasonably. But I do think it's cool that there's so much stuff that is in the meta, including stuff where you maybe omit a healer in some spots. Now let's talk about the prevalence of 4 DPS compositions. Basically, if you scroll down, all of these runs have a healer on the front page of timed keys. All of these runs have a healer on the second page. The first run you have to get to is 47, which is that Nerf run that we looked at earlier. This is the one that doesn't have a healer. And then if you continue to scroll through, pretty much all of these play a healer. And so it's definitely not something that is super popular, or it's not being explored a ton. And especially at bleeding edge to the absolute top level of keys, it's not something that is super common. And so now that I've kind of explained both sides, let me talk about how I feel about this. I think it kind of sucks. Like, it kind of sucks for healers that their role is such to where it can be dropped in a specific situation. I think it is really weird that you are able to play without a healer in some spots. It's also kind of strange to me that more often than not, kind of like Jack suggests, the role of the healer is to just interact with the affixes. We can think of things such as explosive, for example, just interact with the affixes, and they don't really have another role in M+. Now, I will say that I think that this right here, specifically what we were seeing with the no healer compositions just in general, kind of like Nagura stated, it's just a issue of Prot Paladin and honestly kind of Enhancement Shaman. So Prot Paladin is able to have defensives for their group with sacrifice. They're able to keep themselves alive with a lot of healing on themselves. And then on top of that, whatever you're playing with an Enhancement Shaman at this level, they end up sacrificing damage to play for more healing output. And so you'll see in a lot of spots, like for overall healing done, Enhancement Shamans will end dungeons at like, 20k HPS because they're actually having to cast Chain Heal on the group a lot. And I mean, we can even go back to in this VOD to where they're killing the Raging Tempest and stuff like that. And I think this is a great example. The Enhancement Shaman here, I almost called him a Resto Shaman, is doing 30k HPS on the Raging Tempest. And so it's a situation where they're actually kind of sacrificing a decent amount to play without a healer, and including damage. Now, I do think that the off healing from the Protection Paladin and probably also the Enhancement Shaman is a little bit high, but it's not something as simple as, oh yeah, Nature's Vigil and Vamp Embrace and AG just by themselves are too strong. It's not something that is just as simple as those prominent off-healer cooldowns are too strong. More often than not, it's actually Paladin and Enhancement Shaman being able to talent into a lot of healing stuff. So I guess in general, my thoughts are like, the healing role itself kind of lacks a lot of identity, and functionally no content gets easier whenever you add more healing a lot of the time. If you're able to hit like the bare minimum level of healing, then adding more doesn't actually speed up your dungeon. At that point, your healer's best globals are then spent on doing damage because that's going to end up speeding up the time in the dungeon. And I think it's just kind of weird that it lacks identity. It's kind of, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, it feels very similar to tanking and raid, where outside of kind of staying alive as a tank, the tank's role in raid really doesn't have a lot of identity. They're not going to be able to speed up the boss, and so the only thing they can really do after focusing on a bare minimum level of survivability is focus on doing damage to kind of help increase the pace of the fight, speed up your kills, allow for lower mistakes, that kind of thing. And healing in M+ is kind of a similar situation where adding more healing isn't going to solve anything. Like I do think that having healing checks be hard has a lot of value in M+, but something that Jack said I actually agree with Jack here, where Blizzard nerfing the healing checks is not great, but at the same point, the lack of parity among all of the healers is also pretty unacceptable, to the point where, Preservation Evoker is the only thing that was able to heal a 20, or Preservation Evoker or Restorer were the only thing that were able to heal a 25 Raging Tempest before the changes. And then it's like all of these other healers, like Royben mentions, Mistweaver Monk, not able to even heal the first boss of Shadow Moon Burial Grounds on a 27 Tyrannical. Like that has to be just like such an awful feeling. And the comes to question is like, what is the solution? Is the solution to have healing checks not be a thing? Like, I don't really know the answer to this, but it seems like something either needs to change with, I think the role needs to change in M+ is honestly what needs to happen, but I'm not exactly sure how. Because like after you hit this floor of the amount of healing that is required, any additional healing past that doesn't do anything functionally for you to be able to time the keys, and your best globals are then spent on doing damage. Now, do I think that this right here is a problem? Not right now. I think that the 4 DPS compositions as it currently stands are not a problem. I do think that Protection Paladin is a little bit out of line, but I don't think that Blizzard needs to be like right off the rip, immediately changing this to completely nuke Prot Paladin off, healing out of orbit, kind of completely nuking Enhancement Shaman, VE, that kind of thing, that even made this possible. So I don't know. I'm really interested in hearing what you guys think in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.